Such a lining is called as the mucosa. In other words, it is moist lining of interior body cavity. For example, your mouth, your nasal passage, gastrointestinal tract, full cavity, pleura. So it connects the interior body cavity, which is moist in nature, which communicates with the exterior in the aspect of skin. That is called as the mucosa. Okay. So as I said, the mucous membrane, mucosa is the same. It is defined as moist lining of gastrointestinal tract, nasal passages, and other body cavity which communicate with exterior. See, this is exterior in the sense is the skin. That is called as the mucosa or mucous membrane. When such a lining present in the oral cavity, it is called as the oral mucous membrane or oral mucosa. So before I talk about the function of oral mucosa, the oral cavity has two parts, or the oral mucous membrane has two parts, that is vestibular part and oral cavity proper. Okay, the vestibular part is separated by your lip and cheek. Oral cavity proper is separated vestibular part from superiorly it is hot palate, inferiorly it is no one should come in the video. I already informed. Inferiorly it is dorsum of the tongue and posteriorly is a tonsil. This is how the mucous membrane present in the oral cavity. Okay, when you see the oral mucosa by your naked eye, or when you examine your oral mucosa, it is pale pink in color. You go home and just open your mouth, and when you examine your mucosa or cheek, inside the cheek, inside the lip, okay, and tongue and gums, gingiva, it appears as the coral pink in color. Okay, this coral pink in color is a depends on again the vascularity present in the oral mucous membrane and also cells present in the epithelium of the oral mucosa. The cell responsible for pigmentation of the oral mucous membrane is melanocyte. The melanocyte, the cell derived from the neurocast cells, which produce the pigment called melanin, which gives the pigmentation to the oral mucosa. And also, the color dependent of oral mucosa is depends on first is vascularity in the oral mucosa, next is thickness of epithelium. Okay, based on the thickness of epithelium and based on the type of cells present in the epithelium. Right. Next, we'll talk about function of oral mucosa. One of the main functions of oral mucosa is protective in nature, because the mucosa which covering over the different type of tissue in the oral cavity, which act as a barrier from various mechanical forces exerted during your mastication, chewing, and brushing, and also it acts as a barrier from microbial insect. So they said that the cells present in the mucosa will come and defense against the various microbial insect. And second most function is sensation. Okay, when you touch the mucosa, when you touch the lip, when you touch the cheek, inside the cheek, and you touch the tongue, you pursue that sensation. It's mainly carried by cell called Merkel cell. When I talk about the cell individually, I'll tell you. The Merkel cell, the cell which is responsible for tactile perception cells present in the epithelium, which carry the temperature, hot and cold, various sensation in the oral cavity. Secretion, as you all know, the mouth always in moist in nature, because we have the minor salivary gland present in the oral mucosa. It secretes the serous and mucous secretion, which is responsible for moist in nature. Okay, and you know there are three major salivary glands: submandibular, parotid, subclavian gland, the duct which opening into the oral cavity. Okay, which gives the salivary flow to the oral cavity, which act as a bed of oral cavity. Fourth function is thermal regulation, and fifth function is homeostasis, balance the equilibrium of the oral cavity. So these are the functions of the oral mucosa. As I said earlier, the oral mucous membrane can be classified into based on the function, based on the characterization. Okay, I am going for overview of what I took last two classes, so that you can understand when I am going for today specifically about palate, gingiva of the anatomical aspect and histology aspect. When you understand this, you can interpret specific region of the oral mucosa, so you can understand better. Okay, as you all know, based on the function, the oral mucosa can be classified into masticating mucosa, lining mucosa, and specialized mucosa. Masticating mucosa, those mucosa which bear the masticating forces or compressive stresses or various forces exerted during your mastication. Okay, and this mucosa expose more amount of forces. Example for masticating mucosa is gingiva and hard palate. Okay. Next, lining mucosa. You know why it is called lining mucosa? Because here the mucosa covering the musculature of the cheek, lip, alveolar mucosa, floor of the mouth, soft palate. So which shows extensibility, which shows flexibility. When you open mouth like this, you close your mouth and shift the jaw from right to left. Okay, your jaw is moving, your lip also is moving because here the mucosa is flexible, which does not stretch. Whereas masticating mucosa do not stretch. In the masticating mucosa, epithelium connective tissue directly attached to the underlying bone. So the masticating mucosa, namely gingiva and hard palate, does not stretch. So this area it exposed to more force. Okay, lining mucosa where the area where is less exposure to the mechanical force, compressive stresses. Okay, lip, cheek, vestibular pharynx, alveolar mucosa, floor of the mouth, soft palate. So these are the example for the lining mucosa. Okay, so this picture shows the lip, cheek, and vestibular alveolar mucosa. This is the alveolar mucosa, floor of the mouth. This area shows movable part. It's a distendable. So it helps in the movement of the various muscles. Tongue. As you all know, the tongue is specialized mucosa because it presence of taste buds in the papilla. We have a different papilla present in the dorsum of the tongue. Okay, this is the tongue where you have the different type of papilla and it has a taste buds. Because of the taste buds, it carries the sensation and also give the taste for different kind. Okay. So this slide shows, this is a schematic diagram where one can appreciate all different type of mucosa. See here, there's a hard palate and gingiva. The gingival portion is very close to the tooth. So gingiva is always come under the masticating mucosa. Lining mucosa, nothing but lip, cheek, soft palate, and ventral aspect of the tongue, alveolar mucosa. So dorsum of the tongue is always belong to the specialized mucosa. Just now I enumerated why it is called masticating mucosa, why it is called lining mucosa, why it is called specialized mucosa. Okay. Next, when you take a tissue from your oral cavity or from your oral cavity, especially in the mucosa area, and stain with using methoxylin, when you view in the light microscope, you are able to find three structures. That is overlying epithelium, underlying connective tissue, and submucosa. So three structures which is present in the mucous membrane. It is not ruled all three layers must present. There are areas in the oral cavity where there is a missing of submucosa, where there is an absence of submucosa, especially gingiva. Okay, and the area of the gingiva very close to the palatal tissue to the tooth. Okay, so this area where you have missing of submucosa, but majority area in the oral mucosa, in the oral cavity, you have three layers: epithelium, connective tissue, submucosa. Okay, and the connective tissue component of oral mucous membrane is called as the lamina propria. It's very important. The lamina propria is a Latin term for connective tissue component of oral mucous membrane is called lamina propria. It's okay. Again, this is schematic diagram where one can appreciate epithelium. The epithelium of oral mucous membrane is stratified squamous epithelium. Stratified means it's thrown into different layers. Here the epithelium, it's made up of different layers. Okay. Stratified squamous epithelium, it may be keratinized or non-keratinized. Okay. This is the connective tissue. The connective tissue, as you all know, you have studied in the anatomy histology, it's made up of collagen fibers, different type of cells and ground substances. Okay, and just deep down, just below the lamina propria, you have submucosa. Submucosa, where you have major blood vessels, where you have major fatty tissues, where you have neural element, where you have salivary tissue. From submucosa, the blood vessel, this is submucosa. So this is the muscle. Okay, and some from submucosa, where you have the major blood vessels entering into lamina propria and supplying to the epithelium. Epithelium is avascular, does not have the blood supply. Okay, like your enamel. Enamel is avascular in the hard tissue of the tooth. Okay, it's a avascular. Same way, epithelium is avascular. It get nourished or get blood supply from the underlying connective tissue, especially papillary zone of connective tissue. It's okay? It's fine. This is the eosine hematoxylin section. You take bit of tissue, stain with the lab with the eosine hematoxylin. This is this is epithelium. This is the connective tissue. Again, the schematic diagram where it shows epithelium, lamina propria, submucosa. See here, this is the blood vessels. This is a fatty tissue. This is the nerve tissues. Okay, bundle of nerves, the bundle of the blood vessels, fatty tissue, salivary gland, which are all present in the submucosa. Okay, I said the gingiva, and there are some portion of the hard palate, no submucosa. This is the viva point of view. Okay, tell me the area where submucosa is absent. One at gingiva, one at hard palate. Not entire hard palate. The area of the gingiva is very close to the tooth, present in the hard palate. Okay, here what happened? The connective tissue directly attached to the underlying bone. It is called as the mucoperiosteum. As I said, the connective tissue has the salivary gland. Okay, but there are area where you have sebaceous gland, lymphoid follicle. Usually it is absent in the oral mucosa, but very rarely, not very rare, it is present anatomically in the lip. In the lip, where the part of lip is belong to the oral mucous membrane. Part of the lip is belong to the skin. Here you have what are the sebaceous gland. Okay, and also hair follicles, lymphoid follicles, and cheek also you have sebaceous gland. Okay, they called as sometimes this sebaceous gland shows more proliferation. That is called Fordyce diseases or Fordyce granules. Now they say that it is not disease, it's anatomical variation. This is how it looks. See that this is a sebaceous gland very close to the epithelium, present in the connective tissue. Right. You know the epithelium and connective tissue. Okay. The junction between the epithelium and connective tissue is called as the basement membrane. The basement membrane is a acellular zone or acellular structure which divides the epithelium and connective tissue. Okay, or the basal cells of whole epithelium get attached to underlying connective tissue by basement membrane by hemidesmosome. I said last class. Okay, so the junction between two different structures, very similar name. Basement membrane, it's a light microscopic evidence. Basal lamina is electron microscopic evidence. Okay, when you see tissue stained with eosine hematoxylin section, visualize in the light microscope, you see epithelium and connective tissue. Between the epithelium and connective tissue, you find 1 to 2 millimeter layers, clear cells, the clear zone running between the epithelium and connective tissue. That is called as the basement membrane. See, the basement membrane is evident in light microscope. It's found at the interface between the epithelium and connective tissue. They say that it is within the connective tissue part. Okay. Basal lamina, it is electron microscopic finding. It is always epithelial origin. Okay. Right. As I said, the basement membrane, see the thickness, micrometer 1 to 4 micrometer thickness, stained positively with the PAS. And these are the fibers it contains called alveolar fibers. This is very important. When you visualize basement membrane in electron microscope, it is called as a basal lamina. The basal lamina again divided into lamina lucida, lamina densa. Lamina lucida, it is very close to the epithelium. It's a clear zone, very close to the epithelium or just below the epithelium. Just below the lamina lucida, we have the dark zone that is called as the lamina densa. It is always close to connective tissue. It contains a proteins called laminin and bullous pemphigoid antigen. Here it contains high-4 collagen. This slide, it is the schematic diagram. It enumerates the electron microscopic aspect of the basal membrane. See the lamina lucida. This is lamina lucida. Okay, this is the basal cells. Lamina lucida very close to basal cells. Lamina densa is very close to underlying connective tissue. Okay, the cells of vessels connect the basal membrane to the underlying structure by intercellular fluxes called hemidesmosome. Okay, intercellular junction. Right. Now we'll talk about epithelium. As we all know, the epithelium of oral mucosa is stratified squamous epithelium. Okay, it may be keratinized or non-keratinized. Okay, again the keratinization going for two type of maturation. One is orthokeratinization and parakeratinization. Okay, and also the epithelium in the oral mucosa thrown into different layers. See here, different layers from top to bottom. That is called stratification. Okay, right. As I said, the oral mucosa has stratified squamous epithelium. It may be keratinized or non-keratinized, and again the keratinized epithelium going for two process of maturation, orthokeratinized and parakeratinized, and this present the oral cavity is different region. Non-keratinized, they said that all lining mucosa, it is non-keratinized. Lip, cheek, okay, soft palate, ventral aspect tongue, alveolar mucosa. So this area, it is lining mucosa which always non-keratinized. Masticating mucosa is always keratinized epithelium. It may be parakeratinized stratified squamous epithelium or orthokeratinized stratified squamous epithelium. This is all you know. The most common inherent property of all epithelial cells, it is contain keratin intermediate filament. It's called cytokeratin. The cytokeratin, it is a inherent keratin intermediate filaments present in the epithelial cells. So epithelium is made up of by keratinocyte and non-keratinocyte. 90% of the epithelial cells is belong to keratinocyte. 10% is non-keratinocyte. So the epithelium of keratinocyte is made up of by keratinocyte and non-keratinocyte. Okay. Right. What are the different layers of keratinized epithelium? So again, the keratinized epithelium, you have parakeratinized stratified squamous epithelium, orthokeratinized stratified squamous epithelium. It's okay. See, this diagram, schema diagram shows orthokeratinized stratified squamous epithelium. Here, the epithelial cells as a different layer, different type of epithelium. See here, the stratum basal. Above stratum basal, you have 4 to 6 layer thickness, or 2/3 of epithelial cells made up of by stratum spinosum. Above that, you have 2-3 layer of widened and flattened cell. It's called stratum granulosum. Above that, you have stratum corneum. Again, it's wider and flatter, and here it shows sign of degeneration, pyknotic nucleus. Okay, as I said earlier, stratum basal always single layer. Single layer. Okay, here the cell may be locuboidal or corner cells. Here cells are joined by the junction called desmosome. Desmosome, nothing but intercellular junction between the two epithelial cells. And stratum basal has two functions: progenitor function and maturation function. Progenitor function, here the best cells produce new population of cells. Okay, and this cell has to go for differentiation into different layer. That's called maturation. Okay, and stratum spinosum, as I said here, the cells are polyhedral in nature. Okay, and here the cells are joined by desmosome. And one of the main functions of stratum spinosum is active protein synthesis. Okay, and when you compare stratum basal, here the cells are wider and larger. And stratum granulosum, it has one of the unique property is it contains numerous keratohyalin granules. Okay. Again, here the cells, when compared to stratum spinosum, it is wider and flatter. Here it shows sign of degeneration, pycnotic nucleus. Okay. Again, this layer, it has a role in the playing of active protein synthesis. Okay. And surface layer, stratum corneum. Stratum corneum, here the cell called cornified layer or squame cells. Okay, cornified squame. Again, when compared to stratum granulosum, the cells are wider and flatter. Here does not have the nucleus. That's very important. Does not have nucleus, and it shows only the protein called involucrulin. Okay, so orthokeratinoid stratosquamous epithelium has 4 type of epithelial cell, 4 different type of epithelial cells: stratum basal, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, stratum corneum. Whereas parakeratinoid stratosquamous epithelium, it has 3 layers: stratum basal, stratum spinosum, stratum corneum. What the property so far is said for orthokeratinoid, the same property stratum basal has, stratum spinosum has, stratum corneum has. But there is no rule where stratum granulosum is totally absent in parakeratinoid epithelium. It's a myth. What they said is, in the parakeratinoid stratosquamous epithelium, stratum granulosum layer is very much, they said that it's a least distinct. Okay, you are not able to see, light microscope, you are not able to see stratum granulosum because it's less distinct. Okay, it is not exaggerated. Okay, right. Now, as I said, progenitor function, stratum basal is not much important. This is how the cell is differentiated. From the stratum basal, when differentiated into stratum spinosum, see the cells are wider and larger. When here also, next we move on to next stratum granulosum, it's wider, okay, and it's larger. And here, see, as go to surface layer, cornified layer, again it shows sign of pycnotic, and cells is, when compared to stratum granulosum, it's wider, okay, and it's bigger. Right? This is how the cell. Stratum is single layer, stratum spinosum multiple layer, stratum granulosum is 2 to 3 layers, cornified layer, no nucleus present at all here. Okay, they said that the oral squame is a degenerated epithelial cells. It shows going for degeneration, again it forms. Stratum cells in the stratum corneum, it forms throughout your life. It has a, throughout life, a turn. Okay, sorry for interference. Right. So this is the how you're able to see the different layers in eosinophilic section: stratum basal, stratum spinosum, and this is the stratum corneum. This is the parakeratinoid stratosquamous epithelium. I said emetosmosome is a junction between the epithelium and connective tissue. It attaches this stratum basal to the underlying structures called connective tissue. It's okay. The desmosome, it is the intercellular junction between the 2 epithelial cells. It's okay. They said the intercellular bridges. Right. This is how the stratum granulosum. See here, stratum basal, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, and stratum corneum. You won't find any nucleus in this stratum corneum, especially orthokeratinoid stratosquamous epithelium. Right. You know the non-keratinoid oral epithelium. Okay, it has 3 layers. When compared to keratinoid epithelium, non-keratinoid epithelium, it has 3 layers: stratum basal, stratum intermedium, stratum superficial. Okay, so stratum basal is as simple as that of your keratinoid epithelium. Okay, stratum spinosum, it is not present in the non-keratinoid. Here you have stratum intermedium. Okay, and stratum superficial. We don't have stratum granulosum, stratum corneum. Here, stratum superficial. When compared to the cutaneous epithelium, here the cells are large. Okay, and intercellular bridges is very much less distinct, whereas intercellular bridges called desmosome, okay, it's very much intact and distinct and well exaggerated in cutaneous epithelium. Here is very much less intact. Okay, and we don't have any intercellular bridges now just said in the non-cutaneous epithelium. Okay, and one important finding stratum superficial is it has nucleus. See here, it has nucleus. Here nucleus. Okay, so stratum superficial has nucleated cell, whereas cutaneous epithelium, stratum corneum does not have nucleus. As I said earlier, last class, you have three different type of cells, which combine in the non-keratinocyte, which is also called as the clear cells. Why it is called clear cells? Because it does not undergo the process of keratinization. Okay, any cell has to go for keratinization, you need what? Keratin, especially cytokeratin. That's called intermediate filament. So cytokeratin, intermediate filament is absent in the non-keratinocyte. Okay, right, and also desmosome is not much exaggerated, right? So you have three different type of non-keratinocyte present in the epithelium. One is Merkel cells, melanocyte, Langerhans cells. See, the melanocyte, as you all know, it's a pigment producing cell which produces the melanin, okay, which gives the pigmentation to the whole mucous membrane. So melanocyte is present in the stratum basal. This is the melanocyte. Okay, and if you see the cytoplasm, it shows projection. It's called dendritic process. Dendritic means projection, and nucleus shows also, it shows projection, alternative elevation difference, called convoluted nucleus. Okay, and it is arises from embryonic neural cells. Right. See, when you see, you go home, reflect your mouth, just lift your lip cheek, and you find the dark melanin pigmentation in the attached mucosa. This is called attached mucosa. Okay, here you see the pigment. This pigmentation mainly for melanocytes. Okay, so you suddenly you have flare up of the melanin pigmentation during the pubertal age from 16 to 25 years. Okay, some people, some especially the females, especially women, the female, they come to practice. Doctor, my gums got more pigmented tissue suddenly because it's a melanin pigmentation. It's more. Sometimes it shows more protections during the pubertal age. Next is Langerhans cells. As I said, the function of Langerhans cell is immune response. Whenever you have the microbial insult in your oral cavity, your oral mucosa, Langerhans cells come and act as a defense mechanism. Again, it is derived from hemopoietic cells. Again, it is the dendritic cells, clear cells present in the upper spinous cells. Okay. One important finding, one important unique finding present in the Langerhans cells is Bidberg granules. It has granules. These granules arranged in the form of tennis racket shape. It is called as a Bidberg granules. Okay, Merkel cells, as I said, it acts as the tactile proprioception for the touch, temperature, cold, hot, present in the stratum basal and stratum spinosum. It has a free nerve ending, which is responsible for the tactile sensation. As I said, lamina propria is nothing but connective tissue component of the oral mucous membrane. It has two zones, papillary zone and reticular zone. The papillary layer very close to this is the papillary layer, very close to the epithelium. And one important finding is this epithelium and connective tissue junction. Okay, or the junction between the epithelium and tissue. Okay, it gives you the appearance called retiridges. Retiridges, interference between the epithelium and connective tissue thrown into alternative elevation depression. See here, this is the depression elevation. Okay, so interdigitation between the epithelium and connective tissue interference is irregular. That is called as the Reti ridges. This is called Reti ridges or Retipex. Reti ridges or Retipex is nothing but interference between epithelium and connective tissue is irregular or thrown into alternative elevation depression. That is called as the Reti ridges. Again, the lamina propria, you know, the two-part, papillary part and reticular part. Papillary part very close to epithelium, reticular part very close to connective tissue. And submucosa, you know, the submucosa area where you have major blood vessels. As I said, no, the major blood vessels is entering into submucosa from the bone. It's entering into the submucosa. So this is the fatty tissue, okay, and salivary gland, and you have the major blood vessels and the neural element present in the submucosa. Okay, the submucosa attaches the mucous membrane to the underlying structure. It's very important. Submucosa 1 attach the epithelial connective tissue to underlying the periosteum. Okay, this is the epithelium, this is the connective tissue, this is the submucosa. So, the whatever so far I enumerated, it's a basic thing. It's very important you to interpret when I'm going for specific region present in the oral cavity, specific site. Okay. The moment I said hard palate is catenaceous squamous epithelium, you should be able to understand. Oh, stratified catenaceous epithelium. It has the 4 layers. 4 layers. Okay. It's fine. So, stratum basis, stratum spinosum, stratum corneum, granular stratum corneum. So you have to recollect how the stratum basal is, how the stratum spinosum is. Okay, all right. Now we'll go for specific site region, hard palate. You know the palate forms roof of the oral cavity. Okay, and again the palate it consists of broadly divided into immovable anterior part is called as the hard palate. Okay. Hard palate does not stretch. Why? Because here the connective tissue directly attached to underlying periosteum is called mucoperiosteum. Okay, and the posterior movable part of the palate is called as the soft palate. So the palate is nothing but it forms the roof of the oral cavity. The palate has 2 parts. One is hard palate, one is soft palate. Hard palate is immovable anterior part, and soft palate is a posterior movable part. Fine? Right. Next, when you look into the palate by your naked eye, okay, or by anatomy, the palate has different parts. The palate consists of incisive papilla, this is incisive papilla, and this is mid-palatine raphe. This is mid-palatine raphe, and you have the rugae. Okay, and anterior lateral part is called fatty zone, and posterior lateral part is called granular zone. And you have gingival zone, that is the portion of the gingiva adjacent to the tooth. It's called gingival zone or gingival portions. Okay, so a hard palate is a essay question for you. Okay, write in detail about macroscopic aspect and microscopic aspect of hard palate. Macroscopic aspect, nothing but your anatomical aspect. Okay, before you should write hard palate, you should know what this roof means. Palate. Palate forms the roof of the oral cavity. It has 2 parts. Okay, anteriorly immovable part is called hard palate. Posteriorly movable part is called as the soft palate. The mucosa of the hard palate is always stratified squamous epithelium. It does not stretch. It firmly attached to underlying structure. That's why the hard palate, it considers as a masticating mucosa. The more forces will go only in the palate. It's okay? And gingiva, this portion only. Tightly bound the underlying structure to withstand the occlusal forces, physical forces exerted during your mastication. Right? So by anatomy, hard palate has the following parts. So incisor papilla between the two adjacent teeth. The rugae, you have the fibrous connective tissue running lateral part of the palate. Rugae, you have the mid-palatal raphe against the fibrous connective tissue running the midline of the palate, and anterior lateral part. That's called fatty zone. You have the oral mucous membrane which has only the fatty tissue. Here, why it is called fatty area? Because the submucosa contains only fatty tissue. Okay, and granular area or posterior lateral part of hard palate, it contains only the glandular tissue. It's called granular area. And these two parts, fatty area and granular area, it has the one important clinical consideration. Okay, when you go to third year, you might see you're going to see a lot of patients. Sometimes the patient will have the disease present in the oral cavity, especially in the palate. Okay, when they may have the growth. Okay, so the salivary gland neoplasm or salivary gland disease always occur only in the posterior lateral part of the hard palate. Why? Because here the submucosa has salivary gland. It never occur in the anterior area because it contains only fatty tissue. Here you don't have salivary gland lesion. Sorry, salivary gland tissue. Understood? Okay. It has a clinical consideration only in the posterior lateral aspect of the palate. So salivary gland neoplasm or salivary gland disease, it occurs only posterior lateral part, not in the anterolateral part because of the salivary gland tissue present in the posterior lateral part. It's okay? Fine. Next, as I said, this slide shows use hematologic sectioning. When you visualize light microscope, okay, you're able to see epithelium and connective tissue, no submucosa here. And this connective tissue part of the oral mucous membrane is called as a lamina propria, get attached to underlying bone is called as the mucoperiosteum. Able to understand? Right? So epithelium resting on the fibrous connective tissue which is attached to the underlying bone. That's why here the epithelium does not stretch. Lamina propria is thick, dense, okay, especially the rugae. Okay, when I go to specific area, I'll tell you. Okay, this is how the fatty zone, this is how the granular zone. Okay, and this is very important. The zone where you don't have submucosal layer. Submucosa absent in the palatal, where in the palate, in the hard palate, where the palatal tissue is interfering with gingiva. So gingival portions adjacent to the tooth present in the hard palate. Okay, and milk palate and raphe. These two area you don't have submucosa, and also gingiva. Gingiva also does not have submucosa. So the three part where in the oral cavity does not have submucosa, gingiva and gingival tissue very close to the tooth in the palatal region and milk palate and raphe. All other area the palate has okay well defined submucosal layer. Okay, right. Now we'll go for individual aspect. So incisor papilla. This is the incisor papilla. This is all very important. When you go to prosthetic work, when you're taking impression of the upper jaw, okay, they may ask what is incisor papilla, what is the rugae, where is the mid-palatal raphe. Okay, so this is all very important structures. So incisor papilla is nothing but it is the dense collagen fibers, dense connective tissue present midline immediately posterior to the maxillary central incisors. Is okay? Understood? So incisor papilla, it is dense connective tissue which is present in midline in the palatal region posterior to the maxillary central incisor. Okay, it contains the oral part of vestigial organ is called nasopalatal duct. Okay, so here the incisor papilla where the nasopalatal duct will open. So nasopalatal duct present in the incisor papilla. It's okay. Again, here, see, this is the incisor papilla. It's a dense fibrous connective tissue. When you keep your tongue and run in the palate like this, you're able to find the hard portion here. This is called incisor papilla. It's a dense connective tissue. It's present, okay, midline posterior to the between the two central incisors. It's okay. Rugae. So this is the rugae. This is the rugae, and this is the mid palatine graft. Rugae is made up again. It's a dense connective tissue. Extend laterally from the incisor. See here. Extend laterally from the incisor papilla and anterior part of the rugae. This is the rugae. Anterior part of the rugae. It's okay. So from the raphe, you have the fibrous connective tissue running laterally. Even from the incisor papilla, dense connective tissue running laterally, that is called as a rugae. Okay. So epithelial pulse. The epithelial pulse is the histological finding. It is not, it's an anatomical aspect. Here, what happened? You have the rest. You know, the rest of dental lamina is called as the cell rest of serrae. Okay. Same way, the rest of remnant of Hertwig epithelial root is called cell rest of serrae. Same way, here you have the remnant present along the fusion of the two palatal sound, two palatal process. So two palatal process fuse to form the palate. Okay, along this fusion, the line of the fusion, you have a remnant of epithelium. That is called as the epithelial pore. Okay. Fine. Next, we'll talk about gingiva. Just I'll go back again. Let me talk about the hard palate. It's very important. The hard palate, you know, it is the anterior immovable part present in the palate. It's called hard palate. A hard palate, the mucosa covering the hard palate is stratified squamous epithelium. Okay, it is keratinized epithelium. It may be orthokeratized or parakeratinized. The moment I say orthokeratized, you should write all 4 layers. The moment I said parakeratinized, you should enumerate all 3 layers. And the connective tissue here it shows dense collagen fibers. Again, the connective tissue part has 2 areas, papillary area and reticular area. You should write what is papillary area, what is reticular area. Right? You know that collagen fibers, the connective tissue component of oral mucous membrane is called lamina propria. It's made up of by cells, namely fibroblast, acute inflammatory cells, chronic inflammatory cells, and these cells here when held together by substance called germ substance in the form of glycosaminoglycans, proteoglycans. Okay, and it has collagen fibers. It runs apically. This is a different anatomical aspect of hard palate. Incisor papilla, rugae, mid-palatine raphe, fatty zone, and granula zone. These are the histology. Right. Gingiva. It's okay. Gingiva, it is one of the part of the oral mucous membrane. When you visualize naked eye gingiva, it appears as a coral pink in color. Okay, so it's a coral pink in color. Gingiva is keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. It may be orthokeratized and parakeratinized. Okay. So when you talk about the extension of gingiva, the gingiva extends from dentogingival junction to the alveolar mucosa. Nothing but the gingiva which appears as a collar-like fashion around the neck of the tooth. That is called as the marginal gingiva. The gingiva runs from marginal gingiva to the alveolar mucosa. So, okay, that is called as the gingiva. Okay. So by clinically, when you see in clinically, you appreciate different parts of gingiva. One is free gingiva. Next, you have the group present, the free gingiva is called marginal group, and attached gingiva. And junction between the attached gingiva and the alveolar mucosa, you have mucogingival junction. So these are the different parts of the gingiva when you see the gingiva in clinically. So, okay, the free gingiva, there is the 1 to 0.5 millimeter to 3 millimeter gingiva, which is not yet attached to the neck of the tooth, or the posterior gingiva, which runs collar-like fashion around the neck of the tooth, which shows 0.5 to 3 millimeter free. That is called free gingiva. It does not attach to the tooth. Okay, that is called free gingiva. So in the free gingiva, you have the groove. It's called marginal groove. Attached gingiva, those gingiva is firmly attached to the underlying bone, underlying the crust of the alveolar bone or alveolar bone. That is called as the attached gingiva. Okay, it is non-cutaneous serous squamous epithelium. It's okay. Sorry, it is a cutaneous serous squamous epithelium. Right. So, by histology, the gingiva has 3 parts. Okay. When you talk about the microscopic aspect, when you talk about the histological aspect, the gingiva has 3 parts: free gingiva, attached gingiva, interdental papilla. Okay, it's fine. This is the free gingiva. So free gingiva. So those portions of gingiva which encircle the tooth like a collar-like fashion. Okay, from facial and the lingual aspect of the tooth at the neck of the tooth. Okay, it's free by 0.5 to 3 millimeter with average of 1.5 millimeter depth. That is called as the free gingiva. Okay, so depth is called sulcular depth. Sulcus means pouch. When you take the probe, when you put into the between the 2 teeth, okay, just you insert between the 2 teeth, or just you run cervical of the tooth. Okay, you have a space by 0.5 to 3 millimeter, average 1.5 millimeter. It's called sulcular depth. It's average sulcular depth from 0.5 to 3 millimeter, not centimeter, 3 millimeter, average with average of 1.5 millimeter. Why it is important is when you have the gingival disease, when you have the periodontal disease, so this sulcular depth will be increased more than 3. It may be 5 millimeter, it may be 6 millimeter. That's why this is called sulcular depth. Okay. Right. Attached gingiva, those gingiva which are attached to the alveolar process of the maxilla and mandible. Okay. And interdental papilla, the gingiva which forms between the 2 adjacent teeth. It's called interdental papilla. Again, see, this is how the free gingiva, those part of the gingiva which encircle or which arrange in the form of collar-like fashion around the neck of the tooth, both in facial and lingual surface of the tooth. Okay, collar-like fashion. Interdental papilla is nothing but the part of gingiva which occupies between the 2 adjacent teeth. Attached gingiva, the gingiva which get attached to the alveolar bone. It does not stretch. So these are the major 3 parts of the gingiva. Right. This is how the schematic diagram where one can understand very easily. I said gingival sulcus. Okay, nothing but you have the space between the tooth and gingiva by 0.5 millimeter in average depth. That is called as the gingival sulcus or crevice. Gingival crevice. Nothing but pouch, space. It's okay. So this will be increased during the gingival diseases or periodontal diseases. Okay, that's why the patient come to you with any gingival disease. First, you want to check pocket depth. Then you see the color of the gingiva. You know the color of gingiva is coral pink in color. Normal color of gingiva is coral pink. Patient with periodontal disease, gingival disease, where you have the red in color. So these are clinically you have to rule out whether a patient is a normal, healthy gingiva or diseased gingiva. Is okay? Right. Again, is the histology of the gingiva. This is gingival sulcus, free gingiva, okay, and the epithelium which around the gingival sulcus called non-cutaneous stratified squamous epithelium. It's a very thin non-cutaneous stratified squamous epithelium. Okay, this is the inside. Outside, it's a cutaneous stratified squamous epithelium. Okay, fine. You have the notch present in the gingiva is called free gingival groove, especially free gingiva, free gingival groove. Okay, the portion of the gingival epithelium get attached to the cementum of the tooth is called as the junctional epithelium. Okay, right. This is how. Now we'll talk about attached gingiva. So far I talked to free gingiva. You know what is free gingiva? Okay, and what is sulcular crevice, gingival crevice or gingival pouch or gingival crevice? Okay, gingival, okay. And you know the free gingiva where it is extended. Now we'll talk about attached gingiva. Attached gingiva, it always form resilient, tightly bound to underlying periosteum of the alveolar bone. This is the attached gingiva. This is the free gingiva. See the free gingiva here. Free gingiva which runs collar-like fashion. Okay, around the neck of the teeth, both facial and the lingual aspect of the maxilla and mandible. And see here, this is the attached gingiva. Attached gingiva is a firm, resilient, tightly bound to underlying periosteum. It is called mucoperiosteum. It does not stretch. This area exposed to more amount of masticative forces, which withstand the forces. Okay, so it extends from free gingiva to mucogingival junction. This is, see, free gingiva. This is the mucogingival junction. From free gingiva to the mucogingival junction. So fine, right. So when you talk about the width of the attached gingiva, so width of attached gingiva varies from tooth to tooth, and also varies from the tooth present in the anterior region and tooth present in the posterior region, the maxilla and mandible. So they said that the width of the attached gingiva in the anterior region is always wider, and width of attached gingiva in the posterior region, especially premolar region, is always least. Okay, so the width of the attached gingiva in the incisors, especially in the maxilla, 3.5 to 4.5 millimeter in depth. Here, 3.3 to 3.3 millimeter in depth in the mandible. So, and you have the least width of the attached gingiva, which is present in the maxilla, 1.9 millimeter and 1.9 in the mandible. It's fine. So, the width of attached gingiva, it varies from tooth to tooth, area to area, region to region, from maxilla to mandible. Okay, it's more in the anterior region and least in the premolar region. Okay, right. This is very important slide. One important unique characteristics of okay. So one important unique characteristic of attached gingiva is stippling. The stippling nothing but when you take cotton, wipe it on the gingiva, just above the free gingiva, just wipe it, you're able to find pinpoint orangey peel appearance. That is called stippling. Okay, you go home, just retract your lip, take wet cotton, or sorry, take dry cotton, just wipe it, you find you have pinpoint orange peel appearance. Okay, present attached gingiva. They said that these are the elevated area. Between the elevation, there is a depression, which gives the appearance of orange peel appearance. That is called stippling. The stippling is one of the characteristic feature of the attached gingiva. Stippling only present attached gingiva, which is absent in the free gingiva, it's absent in the alveolar mucosa, it's absent in the mucogingival junction. And one important clinical consideration of stippling is The stippling is absent during gingival disease and periodontal disease. It's okay. So the stippling, the portion at the epithelium appears to be elevated. Between the elevations, there are shallow depression which appears as the orange peel appearance. That is called as the stippling. Only attached gingiva is stippled, not free gingiva. So they said that the stippling is one of the probably adapted. When you have masticative forces, when you have the different forces exert in the mouth, so these forces which causes the stippling. So stippling is probably functional adaptation to the mechanical forces. Understood? Right. So now interdental papilla. So internal papilla, as I said earlier, is a part of the gingiva which occupies or fills space between the two adjacent teeth. This is interdental papilla. This is the pre-gingiva. This is attached gingiva. This is alveolum. This is the mucogingival junction. This is okay. So the part of gingiva that fills between space of adjacent teeth, both maxilla and mandible, between the adjacent teeth, that is called as interdental papilla. When you retract the lips and cheek, when you visualize, it appears as a triangle. See here, it appears as a triangle in shape. From the vestibular view, it is a triangular in shape. Whereas three-dimensional view, it posteriorly it appears as a 10 shape, anteriorly the internal papilla appears as a pyramidal shape. This is how three-dimensional view. In the 10-shaped papilla, see here, this is the 10-shaped papilla. So this is the papilla, internal papilla in the buccal side, internal papilla in the lingual side. Okay. See, when you extract the teeth, you're able to see this is the internal papilla here, both. So the 10-shaped papilla, this is the vestibular papilla and this is the oral papilla. So the vestibular part and oral part are high. See the central portion, this is the central portion, shows valley-like depression. Valley-like depression, or it is a central concave area, that is called as the caul. They say that the caul is non-catenarized stratified squamous. The caul is nothing but central concave area between the both oral and the vestibular corner of the interdental papilla. That is called as the caul. So the caul has a significance, pathological significance, because this area is vulnerable. So more prone to the gingival disease, periodontal disease. Understood? Caul nothing but central concave area, present in the interdental papilla. Okay, that is called as a caul. Caul is non-catenized, stratified squamous epithelium. So, okay, so it has a clinical significance. This area will attract more bacteria. It attracts more plaque accumulation, which leads to gingival disease and periodontal disease. Again, this is a schematic diagram where you are able to see different parts and different area of the gingiva. Gingiva sulcus. This is the crust of the gingiva. This is a free gingiva. Okay, this is a free gingival groove, and this is attached gingiva. Then you have mucogingival junctions between the attached gingiva and junction between the attached gingiva and alveolar mucosa. Okay, and alveolar mucosa. This is alveolar bone. Okay, so sulcular epithelium. This is the last slide. Again, this is a schematic diagram where you have gingival sulcus and gingival epithelium and connective tissue and bone. So sulcular epithelium, as I said, the epithelium line the sulcular crevice, gingival sulcus, is always non-catenate stratified squamous epithelium. The moment I said non-catenate stratified squamous epithelium, we should write about stratum basal, stratum intermedium, stratum superficial. You should write about stratum basal, how here the cells are arranged. It's a single layer of cells. So both cells are held together by junctions called desmosome, intercellular junction. Okay, right. and the cells of certain base cells get attached to underlying connective tissue by hemidesmosome. Hemi means off, desmosome means junction. So the hemidesmosome is a junction which connects the epithelium into underlying connective tissue from the basement membrane, basal layer. It's okay. So we should write all status spinosum, how the cells looks. Stratum, spinosum absent. Stratum intermedium. Stratum superficial. Right. So circular epithelium is non-catenized, stratified. Squamous epithelium is thinner when compared to the outer layer. This outer layer of gingiva, this inner layer of gingiva. Outer layer of gingiva is catenized, stratified squamous epithelium. Okay. One of the main function of the circular epithelium is protective in nature. It protects the microbial insult. It's okay. Fine. Right. This is how the structure of gingiva. Epithelium of gingiva is stratified squamous epithelium. It may be paracatenized or orthocatenized, and there are some era it shows non-catenized also. And connective tissue shows prominent connective tissue papilla and reticular area. We don't have submucosa, mind you. Okay. Gingiva and the area of gingiva very close to the tooth in the palatal region, we don't have, and mid-palatine graphy. Okay. So orthocatenized and paracatenized, majority is belongs to paracatenized of stratified squamous epithelium, and 50% is catenized squamous epithelium, that is orthocatenized, and 10% is non-catenized. Epithelium, this is reti ridges. As I said, the junction between the epithelium and connective tissue shows irregular interference thrown into, okay, alternative elevation projections called as the reti ridges. Okay. See, this is the lamina propria. This is epithelium, connective tissue, and this is the bone. Okay. So lamina propria consists of dense collagen fibers made up of papillary zone and reticular zone. Okay. Here the papilla are long and slender and numerous. See, it's a long and slender. This is a papilla, long and numerous, slender, and do not contain large blood vessels. Okay. Connective tissue contains fibroblast and few chronic inflammatory cells. As I said, no submucosa is present. That's why gingiva does not stretch. Okay. So we'll wind up today's class. Tomorrow I'll talk about gingival fibers. Okay. And what is gingival fibers? What are the names given for gingival fibers to gingiva? What are the different type of gingival fibers and how it runs in the gingival tissue? Okay. Then blood supply and nerve tissue. Okay. Right. So today you go home and read hard palate and gingiva. Okay. Because the hard palate, as I said, is an essay question. Even gingiva is an essay question for you. Okay. Go home and take notes. See the question, write on the question. Describe microscopic and macroscopic aspect of the hard palate and gingiva. Add clinical consideration. That is one. It's an essay question. Let me repeat again. Write in detail about macroscopic aspect and microscopic aspect of hard palate and gingiva. It's both essay question. Add note on clinical consideration. One. Short notes, because I gave two essay, gingiva essay and hard palate essay. Short notes, non-catenocyte in the epithelium. Non-catenocyte in the epithelium. Desmosome and hemidesmosome. Okay. Very short notes. Stippling. Birkbeck granules. Stippling. Birkbeck granules. Layers of paracatenized stratified squamous epithelium. Layers of orthocatenized stratified squamous epithelium. Layers of non-catenized stratified squamous epithelium. Layers means different cells. Okay. And difference between basal lamina and basal membrane. So I gave